for a first down by the tight end Logan Paulsen. At this stage of his rookie year. First throw. And a nice catch by Logan Paulsen.
All right, welcome to the Stream Champs Show. This is your host, Tony. I have a very special guest in the building today. I have Mr. Logan Professor Paulsen in the building. If y'all don't know who he is, he's a former NFL tight end and current NFL analyst. How you doing, Logan?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on for me today, man. So we just want to jump right into it. Just get a little bit about your background for our listeners who don't know who you are. I know who you are. Our listeners, a little background about you from California originally. Went to school at UCLA University, undrafted free agent out of UCLA, drafted and signed by the Washington Redskins at the time in 2010. So I did just want to ask you, as far as getting undrafted, how was that as far as the preparation? Not getting drafted and getting signed by a team. What was your mindset going into camp, and how was that for you?
Yeah, I think I didn't really have any expectations of getting drafted. On the day, it looked like I might get drafted in the 7th round, but I didn't test very well. My college film was okay. So I kind of talked with my agent, talked with some of my coaching buddies who were in the NFL at the time. They kind of said, I'd expect to go undrafted. So that kind of met my expectations. And, in some ways it worked out really well because I was able to pick a team where the roster situation was very favorable because I had some other opportunities, one being San Diego, the other was Dallas, and the Washington football team roster at the time, or the Redskins roster at the time, was really conducive. They had obviously Chris Cooley and Fred Davis, but most teams carry 3 tight ends, so that 3rd tight end spot was kind of up for grabs. And it was me competing against some veterans. So I just went in and said, my dad, he worked a pretty serious job for a long time. So did my mom. And I had these really nice models of what professionalism was. And so I just approached it like a job. I got there early, I stayed late, and I just said, I'm going to leave everything I have on the field. And I had no expectations that I was going to make the team because, slow white dudes don't make NFL rosters really. So there was this opportunity, and it just kind of just played hard, and I played well, and it ended up falling for me. And I was just extremely grateful for Mike Shanahan for giving me the opportunity and that whole staff. It was really fantastic.
Yes, sir. Definitely humble beginnings, but you definitely made it. And I remember your rookie season. I'm down here in Montgomery, Alabama now, originally from the DMV, PG County. And I remember your rookie season. Like you said, you were behind Chris Cooley, fan favorite, definitely a great tight end, Fred Davis at the time. What did you learn from Chris Cooley? He was already a veteran with the team. As far as his preparation, as far as going about being a professional in the NFL.
Yeah, Cooley's obviously a different personality and a different cat, but he's a very smart guy, and he studies he doesn't study hard, but he takes really fastidious notes, right? So I remember leaving the meetings and him kind of pulling his notes out and him literally having almost every single word written down, and I was just like, how did you get all that stuff? How did you keep track of everything? And that's just how his mind works. So, seeing that kind of note-taking philosophy, I adopted the same thing. I've got these really intricate notes now that I take in large part because of him. That's what I did in college as well, but it kind of pushed me to that next level of saying, I need to understand all the positions, need to understand the entire offense. And then the other thing he told me, which resonated with me, and I tell young guys that I mentor now, was make sure you own the snap count. And it was kind of a silly thing at the time, and people don't really probably understand why that's important, but I was getting off the ball a little bit late because in college you don't have to get off the ball at the same time as everybody else because I was just better than everybody at the time. When you're in the NFL, everyone's very good. And so Chris was it's actually not on set go, it's on the S of set. And so then I started doing that, and it really, really helped my performance out. And I think honestly it's one of the reasons I ended up making the roster because it allowed me to kind of be at least in the same sphere as some of these guys who've been around the NFL for a long time. So, and then obviously just kind of the way you practice every day, you practice very hard every day, which I think a lot of fans might not expect from him, but he practiced very hard, and all those things were extremely advantageous and extremely important for my development as a player in the NFL.
Yes, sir. Very well said there. I definitely remember want to fast forward a little bit to the 2012 season. You were third string again this time behind Niles Paul and Fred Davis. I want to say Fred Davis got hurt.
Yep.
It was ACL. So your role was a lot bigger. So having a bigger role going into that season, and how was the preparation as far as just, okay, now I'm third string, now I'm second string tight end. You know, I'm getting more receptions. You're already all around great tight end. I remember pass blocking.
Yeah.
So how was it stepping up into that role? Now you're being second string now, not third string.
Yeah. So, that was kind of the opportunity for me to get like a starting role, because Niles had just converted from wide receiver. So his position specificity was a little vague at the moment. He kind of had that wide receiver background, and obviously was a very physical player at a receiver position, but still getting familiar with all the technical nuance of playing the tight end position. And so when Fred went down, my role was slowly expanding prior to that, because, the offense we were running was becoming a little bit more complex. It was becoming kind of this heavy, zone read RPO type system to kind of help Robert's skill set coming out of college, obviously a very explosive athlete. And there was a lot of like kind of mental gymnastics associated with some of those plays and the play calls. And, Kyle said to me, you're going to be playing more. I wasn't expecting to be starting, obviously, but when I did start, it was really nice, it just kind of supported the way I'd been preparing the whole time, because I had coaches tell me, make sure you prep like you're the starter. Exactly. And, you're not going to get an opportunity necessarily to get the same reps. So how do you kind of make sure you're on the same level with those guys in terms of how, getting the same level of preparation without getting the same kind of repetitions in practice. So I just studied like a lunatic, and it was rewarded, because his injury happened against the Giants, and it was like in the first quarter. Right. So I ended up playing the whole game after that. And, if I hadn't been prepared, if I hadn't studied, I would have kind of blown my opportunity. And so I'm just really grateful that people had given me that advice, and that I had listened to it and was able to take advantage of that opportunity in that moment, and be ready to play a lot of football, because I ended up playing the rest of the season and started a lot of games in 2023. That was Jordan Reed's first or second year, I think, and he was kind of taking an expanded role, and obviously Niles was continuing to grow, but still played quite a bit of football, which was really exciting for me.
Yes, sir. That's definitely a lesson to a lot of young players out here. Like you said, at the NFL level, everybody has talent. Everybody's strong, but it's mental preparation, and which was done behind closed doors and film. Okay. And I definitely want to touch on that with you, because I watch your show, and you do break down film very well, and that's something I can see that definitely translated in your game when you were playing. So I always wanted to ask ex-football player, NFL player, who did go undrafted. I call it coming into new money. So you were set to become a free agent in 2013, and then you signed a lucrative deal. So what was that like, just coming into new money? You weren't like the top 5 pick, top 10 pick, but getting that type of money, getting your really first deal like that, and wanting the team to have you, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that was probably the more important thing. The money really was never an issue for me when I played. I didn't even know what my check was for most of the time I played. I just was really focused on being the best professional I could be. And, my wife would get the check, she'd deposit it, and that was the end of that. But I think the bigger thing for me was the fact that when I got that extension, it was the first time in my career where I felt like the team wanted me there. They wanted me back. They wanted me to be a part of what they were building moving forward, which was really cool and really unique, because up to that point, every single day I was afraid I was going to get cut. And that's not an exaggeration. Even when I was playing a lot of football, I was always worried that they were going to try to find somebody else. So when they signed that deal, I was like, at least for this 1 year, I'm going to be here with this team and be a part of it. And that was really nice. That was one of the highlights of my career for sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So fast forward to 2016, you go to the Bears. You signed to the 53-man roster there, and then you go to the San Francisco 49ers, and then you went to the Houston Texans.
Atlanta Falcons too.
Atlanta Falcons. And actually, that's about 2 hours from me, Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah, 2-hour drive from Montgomery here in Alabama. So switching cities like that and having a family, it's never easy, I'm sure. So I just want to give our listeners a little insight on going from one city to the next, and then basically packing up, and like you just mentioned, not knowing, that unknown, what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really tough couple of years for me because I had a young son. My son was, I want to say he was 2 years old when I went to Chicago. And my wife was, I want to say 3 months pregnant at the time. So she ended up staying in Virginia where the Washington football team practice facility is. And I was in Chicago and I lived in a hotel. And, I tried to fly home on our off day, which was Tuesday, and stay basically for like 10 hours, then fly home. And she would try to come out, but as she got more pregnant, that was tough. And that was really, really challenging for our relationship, because like my wife was basically like a stay-at-home single parent, while I was away. And obviously like that's really challenging on the relationship, and obviously really challenging for the relationship with my son, which was tough. But I was getting to do something that I loved and I was very passionate about. And I met some really cool people when I was in Chicago. And then San Francisco, we said, we're not going to do the distance thing again. So the family moved out there. But again, that's tough. Like, when you're playing, you're on a team. I'm sure you've been on a team before. Like, you kind of have a built-in group of friends, right? A relationship established already. And that's not the same thing for my wife, for my kids, So, we're out there with a 3-year-old. My son was 3 and my daughter was just born, and so that was a lot for my wife, and not having a good support system out there was really, really challenging. But she crushed it because she's a beast. And then I ended up getting cut and re-signed 3 times in that same year. So after the first time I got cut, they said, stay around. I stayed around, re-signed. They cut me again. And I moved the family back home. So we ended up spending about half that year apart anyway. And kind of a funny story. I remember on the day I got cut the second time, I had to give a presentation at my son's school.
Oh, man.
They wanted me to talk about what it was like to be part of the San Francisco 49ers. And I just was like, I'm not in the mood to be talking to a whole bunch of little kids about this. Then they re-signed me again after that. And I came back and I lived in like basically a hostel, like a single family home that had been subdivided into like multiple things. So I was living in like a room that I could touch both walls of and basically playing football, and that was it. And again, I was away from my family, which was super tough. And then went to Atlanta, and we were going to move down. We were all set to move down, but my son had just started school and all these different things, so they ended up staying apart. So again, a year apart from my family, and in Houston, the same thing. So I think the thing that came out of that was like, everyone's like, oh, my agent specifically was like, excuse me, Logan, you could have kept playing for another 2 years probably. But I just emotionally couldn't handle the distance and the separation and the stress that not being in the same state with my family was providing to my life, So kind of made the decision to move on after that and be home and be a dad and be a husband. And I think it was the best decision I've ever made. So.
Oh yeah, man. Shout out to the wives out there, man. And holding it down. Cause like you said, that goes unsaid a lot of times, especially when you get to the level like yourself in professional sports. The wives go through they go through a lot. The kids go through a lot. So shout out to you. Shout out to the family for that, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir. I do want to touch on fast forward until now the Washington Commanders.
Yep.
Do want to get your take on the Carson Wentz trade that definitely went down, traded to the from the Indianapolis Colts to the Washington Commanders. And I just want to get your opinion on what you think Carson Wentz will do for this offense going forward. What is going to bring that Taylor Heineke, and then we can go down the list that they didn't bring.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand that I think Carson Wentz isn't like a top 10 quarterback all of a sudden, but he is an upgrade over the prior quarterback situation. And everyone says, oh, well, you paid him all this money. It was $28 million to come here. And if you look at what you would have had to pay Jimmy Garoppolo or Russell Wilson, it's peanuts kind of by comparison, which is crazy to think about when you're talking about $28 million. But I do think he brings a very strong arm. I think he brings experience. I think he's a pretty solid leader. I understand there's some rumors and speculation about how he is in the locker room, but I do think that this environment here in Washington will support him a little bit differently, right? He doesn't have all this pressure of going in Indianapolis where it's Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning and all these kind of iconic quarterbacks. Like, he's going to come here and the fan base is going to love him because he's going to be playing better, right? Like, he's going to, as long as he just plays at like a normal NFL quarterback level, the fan base is going to love him. I think the arm strength is something that really jumps out to me in terms of what it's going to allow Scott Turner, to do in terms of pushing the football down the field, exploiting the speed that they have at the receiver position. Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuels, all those guys, De'Ami Brown. I think that those things are going to be really important for this offense. It'll open up the running game for Antonio Gibson. So I just think it's going to allow the offense to be what I think Scott Turner wants it to be, or what he envisions it to be, which is a more vertical passing attack to create space underneath for guys like Logan Thomas or Gibson or McKissick. So I think like I said, he's not going to, all of a sudden have this revival and be a top 10 quarterback again. I think he'll probably fall somewhere between 18 and 25 in terms of quarterback ranking. But I do think that that's better than that's significantly better than what Washington had last year. And I think it's significantly better than what they had the year before. And so I think the offense is going to probably be 3 to 4 games better in terms of win percentage. And then that's not even accounting for the fact that the defense is going to be better just because they don't have a first place schedule any longer, right? They have that third place schedule now because of how they finished in the division. And I think you're going to see a resurgence from that side of the football, and it's going to support everything very nicely. And I think there's a good chance that they win the division, especially with all of the kind of turnover that Dallas is going through at the moment. Obviously, Philadelphia, they have a ton of draft capital this year. They're going to get a lot better on offense and defense, I would assume. I'm working on a mock draft right now.
Okay.
I've got Philly taking a lot of defensive players in the first round. So that's going to be an interesting kind of, how much better can Washington get in comparison to the other teams in the division. But, because the Giants have 2 first-round picks. Philadelphia has 2 first-round picks. They have 2 first-round picks next year. So everyone's going to get a lot better in the division, but I do think that the addition of Carson Wentz is going to drastically change the landscape of this division and put Washington in a pretty good spot going into the season.
Yes, sir. I definitely agree with you. Like you said, and shout out to Taylor Heineke. I'm definitely a big Taylor Heineke fan. He held it down for us. He really did. But like you said, Carson does bring a lot of pop in that arm to the team. And I feel like that's what was missing last year. It was definitely frustrating seeing some of those underthrown balls last year. But I also want to touch on the tight end position, and I know that's your specialty there. Going into the season, okay, Logan Thomas, he's probably going to miss a little bit of time from his injury last year. Hopefully not, but we'll see. We have Samus Reyes. We had Ricky Seals-Jones, but he went to the Giants, signed with the Giants. And we have John Bates, which I really like John Bates. I think he's definitely up and coming. So do you think we might maybe draft a guy mid-round, or we still maybe sign one of these guys who maybe unexpectedly get released, or what do you see the tight end position going? Well, behind
I think they're definitely going to add 1 or 2 players. Usually going into camp, you have between 5 and 7 guys on the roster that, kind of help you flush it out. One of those guys ends up on practice squad. Then you have 3 guys usually on active roster. So you need a couple more people in the building at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted somebody. I know they're doing their due diligence on the guys. This is kind of a tough year for tight end. There's not like an elite playmaker at the position, right? And I'm not sure you need that. There are some guys with interesting skill sets. Greg Dulcich out of UCLA is a converted wide receiver, very explosive, very twitched up, kind of that F move piece for the offense, which would be an interesting addition here. Although I think he'll probably be gone in the second round, which would be a little bit too pricey, I think, for what Washington's looking for. Another guy is Jelani Woods out of Virginia, who's big, strong, athletic.
I like Jelani.
Yeah, converted quarterback, very, very raw, but I think has a lot of potential to be very good. And then guys like who could just be solid starters, I think, are like Charlie Croner out of Iowa State is a guy that is interesting. The guy from Ohio State is interesting also. But again, those guys will be available probably, I'd say, mid-third to the end of the draft, and there's some good football players there that would flesh out your depth nicely. But in terms of finding playmakers at the position, I'm not sure there's anybody outside of like Greg Dulcich or, McBride from Colorado State is an interesting guy. He ran really well at his pro day, but his speed on tape doesn't necessarily match up, but a very productive guy, creates separation, tracks the ball really well. But again, those 2 guys, those 2 playmakers are probably out of the draft in the second round. So I think but outside of that group, there are some solid kind of role player type bodies that you could pick up that I think would be good additions for this team.
Definitely. I'm with you. I'm a Jelani Woods fan. Try to follow as much as I can.
Not be, right?
Yeah, definitely. Try to follow as much as I can down here. As much as I can, and keep track of everything up north. The draft is receiver top heavy. Garrett Wilson, Ohio State, Drake London. What do you think about Chris Olave at 11, or do you think maybe we should trade back and recoup some of those picks that we got rid of to get Carson Wentz?
I think if you can trade back, you should trade back. I think this draft between probably picks 30, 28, and the rest of the draft, maybe, the 6th round, is very, very dense with playmakers. And you can find some guys who are very, very talented. With regards to receiver, I'm not the biggest Chris Olave fan. I know a lot of people are. I just think he lacks a little bit of physical toughness that I would prefer to see in a receiver. Like in my mock draft, for example, or my big board, I should say, it's Wilson from Ohio State, Williams from Alabama, Drake London, and then Olave is my 4th guy. And I think Olave does have a very nice skill set for running routes and an acumen, but he doesn't block very well. He kind of turtles up over the middle. And, when you're comparing, fruits, you got all the apples laid out, you want the one with the least amount of blemishes. And I know Williams is coming off an ACL, but to me, he'd be the number 1 receiver in the draft this year if he hadn't done that, right? And so I think that's something that I would err that way. Drake London, again, the physicality. I'm a little bit worried he's not going to run very fast because he looks like kind of a move tight end in that offense at USC. But again, very physical, very competitive. And I like that. That's important to me because it shows that football is important to them. And I want guys that love football and are going to play hard. And Olave, that's a question for me. And as a result, he gets moved down my board a little bit. I know a lot of people have him as their number 2 wide receiver, and some people even has their number 1 over Wilson. I would disagree with that. I think Wilson is the most kind of polished. He reminds me a lot of Calvin Ridley, for example. Very dexterous, great footwork, explosive in and out of his cuts, very polished. Olave has explosive potential, but not quite the same polish. And then take away the toughness, and he gets downgraded on my board. But, so I would say Williams was a guy I'd like a lot. And then Drake London, again, I mentioned the reservations about his speed.
Definitely. He's definitely a physical presence, Drake London. I definitely agree with you. I feel like we should recoup some of those picks that we did get from the Carson Wentz trade. Also, we're getting Dyami Brown back.
Real quick, the problem with that, though, in my opinion, is that there's not a lot to trade up for. There's not like that kind of that value pick that everyone's like, oh, I got to move up to get so-and-so, right? If you need an elite pass rusher, maybe, but this is a pretty dense first round of pass rushers. Like, Karlaftis, Mafe from Minnesota, and there's a kid from Penn State who I like better than both of those guys. But again, those guys will be there in the second half. So if you're a team looking for a pass rusher, it's not like, I need to move up to get this guy, right? Exactly. I think that makes it tough at 11. Maybe Kyle Hamilton, but his stock is kind of falling from what I understand. Jordan Davis, I think maybe his team might move up to get him because of his potential, but I don't think they have to. So again, who do you move up for? There's not that elite quarterback that's going to get somebody to jump up and go get him.
I agree. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And like you said, we're getting Curtis Samuel back. He's expected to be healthy again. Dyami Brown hopefully coming to his own this year. J.D. McKissick, that's big. I was going to cry down here when I thought we lost him to the Bills, man. And then I thought it was fake news that he was coming back. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay, we're getting our man McKissick back. Jared Patterson, big fan of his, DMV guy. Love his game. So we have the running backs there, AG. So we had AG. So we have those guys.
Inside scoop. I think from what I've heard, they're looking pretty hard at the running backs this year. So maybe second, third. I still don't want the third, but I heard the kid from Michigan State is high on their list. They had Brees Hall in for a visit. Obviously, those guys are kind of the premier backs in the NFL or in the draft this year, and I think they might be available when they're picking at 47 in the second round.
Sounds good. I mean, do you think that's a direct correlation with the maybe AG? I'm talking about for our listeners, Antonio Gibson, his durability maybe, or just to have another body?
I think you want to add playmakers, and when you talk to Ron, when you talk to Martin Mayhew, they always say that they feel that the roster is very established, and when you have an established roster, you feel like you have an established roster. You kind of have the ability to kind of make luxury picks, and I think a back is a luxury pick. I don't value backs the same way I used to in terms of my draft evaluation because I think you can get a lot of them. I think you can get one in the fourth round that's going to be a good football player. So I don't think you need to waste good draft capital on a pick that high. Like let's say, for example, you don't go receiver in the first round. There's Christian Watson, there's Alex Pierce, there's maybe Jahan Dotson. He might fall to you in the second round there. And those guys are playmakers that are going to make your offense immediately better. Well, the back's production is more correlated to how the offensive line is performing, right? Like there's a guy like Daniel Falele from Minnesota. You could put him in at right tackle, bump Cosby into guard, and that offensive line's much better. And then Gibson's way more productive. You have a much more protective surface for Carson Wentz as well. So drafting a running back in the second round seems a little rich for my blood.
Right.
But again, they have their own personal evaluations, and I'm going to respect that. And if they feel they can, kind of have the luxury of drafting back in the second round, then go for it.
Yes, sir. I'm with you on that. Definitely. That is a little high, but that's news to me. There, like you said,
this is just guys that've had in for visits and stuff, and guys that they said that they are interested in, and at this point, you're interested in good football players, and those guys are good football players. So.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Fill out the team. Like you said, playmakers.
Yeah.
So on the defensive side of the ball, excuse me. Chase Young, he's expected to come back ready and healthy. God willing, hope he's get him back. You mentioned Kyle Hamilton. I like his size. Out of Notre Dame, but I'm a Maryland guy. I like my man Nick Cross. Down the line. What do you think about Nick Cross, safety Nick Cross?
I actually checked Nick Cross out after he ran his 40 at Indianapolis, and I think he ran a 4.3, which is the fastest of any safety. Mm-hmm. He's put together in a nice way. I think he's like 5'11", like 215 pounds, so big guy for safety. I think the thing that came across when I watched his tape was he didn't take the best angles playing safety. Kind of missed a lot of tackles. Obviously, you see the speed; it shows up really nicely. But kind of takes weird angles in terms of tracking the football and then tracking the ball carrier for a tackle. So that makes me a little bit nervous. The guys that really stuck out to me kind of in that same evaluation process was the kid from Baylor. He kind of plays nickel in that field safety in that defense, and he's a very physical, dexterous guy who can cover in the slot. Great tackler. And then the kid from, I think Brisker is his name, from Penn State. Bigger body, reminds me a lot of Collins, very physical tackle, can take on blocks. I think he'd be perfect fit for that Buffalo nickel spot. And again, there's a guy, if you're looking for value, will be there in the second round. And, Kyle Hamilton is a guy that I think was everybody's kind of favorite. Everyone said he's going to go second overall. Pro day numbers. And then you watch his film and you don't see kind of this hyper polished player that I think that I was expecting to see when I watched this film. So I think there's better value with Brisker and then the guy from Baylor, who I have a lot of respect for in terms of how they play the game and the physicality that they approach it with. I think they're a little bit better athletes. I think they're a little bit better at coverage. And if you're just drafting a guy to fill that Buffalo nickel role, which is an important part of this defense, I think that's a way to get that done in the second round. Again, talking about value in that second round, I think that's more valuable than a running back.
Yeah, I definitely. You touched right on it because I was just going to mention losing Landon and who was going to fill that role. What are your feelings on Jamin Davis? What are your feelings on Jamin Davis coming into this year?
So I think Jamin Davis is kind of one of those draft. When you're drafting, obviously you're looking for a guy who can play football at a high level, but you're also looking for someone who projects well at the next level. And what I mean by that is, I think let's take Jordan Davis, for example. When you look at him, he's the defensive tackle out of Georgia. The big guy.
Big guy.
Yeah. Right. Everyone, the guy that he played with, Devontae Wyatt, is probably a better football player right now. But when you watch tape, Jordan Davis projects at this really high level, right? That he could be maybe the best defensive lineman in the NFL. He's big, he's physical, he does stuff that no other person on the planet Earth can do. That's when you watch Jamin Davis' college tape, you get that same type of vibe. You get a guy who's 6'4", 240 pounds, long arms, and runs a 4.4, and all of the jump measurements support him as kind of an explosive athlete. And so when you watch his film in the NFL, he's outstanding in coverage, which he was very good at in college, and he runs well to the football. We mentioned kind of poor angles and tackling and things like that. He does that a little bit, but I think he has a lot of potential to be very good in space. The problem where I think his game is most efficient and the thing that's going to be hardest for him to correct is him taking on blocks. And I think that that's something that makes it really prohibitive for him playing at a high-level linebacker in the NFL. Now, we mentioned Jordan Davis. I think that's a nice segue into this conversation. At 11, I think that would be a little high for Jordan Davis. But talk about a guy who eats double teams like, he's eating pancakes at breakfast, right?
Man.
And covers guys up. And if you let's take a look at Tampa Bay, for example, Vita Vea and Devin White. Vita Vea does an outstanding job of keeping Devin White covered up. So all those block destruction techniques that Jamin struggles with, Devin White never has to do that. So maybe you bring in a piece like a Jordan Davis, or maybe a Wyatt if you feel good about it. But Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Davis is the guy that comes to mind because of how great he is against double teams. Keep Holcomb, keep Davis in the back end covered up, and let them run to the football. Let them be those great athletes, and then kind of remove that necessity of them having to diagnose runs and destroy blocks at a high level. Because if you watch Nakobe Dean, again, the linebacker from Georgia, he's hard to evaluate because he never has to do those things, and it lets him run to the football. So I say, why not bring in a physical piece on first and second down that's going to elevate the back end of your defense in terms of run support and let those guys play faster and allow that physical freak in Jamin Davis to kind of grow and foster and develop.
Man, I'm like smiling inside. Jordan Davis, I mean, if we can get him at 11, I feel like that would be big for our team. Then you have Deron Payne still there. You got Chase Young, still have Sweat on the outside. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to signing another defensive guy. I really wouldn't.
Especially I think because they've had a hard time signing interior rotational guys at the moment, right? Obviously Settle and Ioannidis are gone, and that was a big part of the rotation. So why not bring in another rotational piece? And I think some of the friction between Deron and Allen was because Deron wasn't getting to pass rush, but now you have a guy in Jordan Davis who's specifically here to play first and second down. Obviously, Payne still rotates in, but now Payne becomes that pass rush specialist, and I think that elevates him and his production to the team just by bringing him in. It just seems like a nice fit. It's a little rich at 11, like it's a little pricey, Jordan Davis, I'm saying, but I think the fit on paper anyway feels like the right type of thing for this team and something that would make them a lot better kind of with one piece, if he does what he did in college. But again, it's a little pricey. So
definitely pricey. I'm for it though. I'm here for it. I am here for it. I did want to get don't want to keep you too long here. I did want to get your prediction for the season. I know it's super early, but on my take, I can see us squeaking out 3 or 4 more wins with Carson Wentz just staying healthy and like you said, just more opportunity downfield throws in McLaurin, keeping guys healthy. I mean, COVID last year wrecked the team. I mean, we can get at least 3 or 4 more wins, but I just want to
I'm 100% on board with that. I think at a minimum, you're looking at 3 or 4 more wins. I think if he comes in and plays like he played in Indy, which is not great, but if he just plays at that kind of level and Scott's able to kind of find ways to make him feel as comfortable as he can in this offense, because I will say this offense is, I think, from a decision-making standpoint, can be very quarterback-friendly. And what I mean by that is they don't run a lot of concepts, and the concepts they run are very kind of easy reads. And if they can get Carson execute those at a high level, I think he's going to be, more comfortable, more confident, and a more confident quarterback leads to more offensive production. So I think that'll be great. And also, the defensive resurgence, I think is going to be a big part of that. There's some questions about Chase and all those types of things, but I think he'll be back and ready to go. Heard his rehab's going very, very well. That's good. So I think the defense is going to be playing much better, and I think there's a shot that they win the division. Kind of not walking away with it. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to play well, but I definitely think that's a very reasonable expectation this year, just given the strength of schedule and just given the addition of a guy who can let this offense blossom. Obviously, like Carson Wentz, there are some issues. Psychological. We've seen bad Carson Wentz. We've seen good Carson Wentz. As long as we can get something in the middle, the team can. I think we're going to be in good shape.
Definitely. Yes, sir. Like you just mentioned, the schedule, the strength of the schedule. Kind of just looking ahead, I'm like, okay, we had that gauntlet of quarterbacks last year, and this year we have a couple, but it's always
not the same thing, right?
It's definitely not the same thing, unless a team just every year a team surprises. But I really feel like this is our time to step into that role, even if it's a wild card. You know what I mean?
And I think that's another reason, why this year's draft is so important is can they kind of flesh out some of these pieces and make this team a little bit better and make sure it's on competitive par with the other teams in the division, because the Giants have 2 first-round picks. Like I just mocked them, getting Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau. Those guys are game-changing players at the position, right? And you look at Philadelphia, they're probably going to end up with like Devin Lloyd or Devontae Wilkins, on the inside, good defensive pieces, and then maybe a playmaker at receiver in terms of Drake London. He slipped my mock to that point. So I think, obviously they're going to get a lot better in the first round. And what can this team do to make sure that they can keep pace with teams that are getting a lot better early on in the draft?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here for it, man. When can we expect that mock draft to drop?
So hopefully, I mean, I'm still working on it. I got right when I came down here, I just stepped away from it for a second. It's
okay.
ready for Monday. So yeah, I guess guys keep an eye out for that. And,
yes.
I'll probably post it on my Instagram too, which is Logan_Paulsen82.
Yep,
if you guys want to check it out. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So and give me your thoughts on it, because I have a lot of respect for these guys who do mock drafts now. This is my first one I've ever done. It is a beast. Mm-hmm. So hopefully you guys like it.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out Logan Paulsen, y'all. Definitely check his Instagram out, Logan_Paulsen. Is that Logan_Paulsen 82?
82, yep.
82.
Yep.
Also, you have a show Beyond the Box Score as well.
Beyond the Box Score, and I do some like coaches show with Ron Rivera. I should have an interview with him coming up soon, talking about the draft, which will be great. With Ron Rivera, and do some stuff with, like, I think it's Washington Football Today still. We haven't added the show name.
You're everywhere, man.
Go on NBC, so we should check it out.
Yes, sir. And you do things with Santana as well.
So Santana's on that same show, and it's been good to reconnect with Tana, and he always has great insight for receivers, and he's just such a well of knowledge, having been in the NFL for as long as he was. So.
Yes, sir. Wade, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here, man, and blessing the Stream Champ show. Definitely wanted to have you on because you definitely one of my favorite players during your tenure with us. Always felt like you were a hard worker. You were an all-around player, team player. That was a magical run during the 2012 season. I'll never forget it. But I definitely I'm glad you came on here, and we'll definitely be looking out for that mock draft. I know I will be.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Yeah, yes, hey, thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
Hey, yeah, appreciate you, my man. You have a good one, okay?
Yep.
All right.
Bye.
Yes, sir.